Fire disaster in another market here in the economic capital Douala. Over 20 shops reduced into ashes by ravaging flames at the Bonamusadi market here in Douala. And also in this newscast, Boko Haram demands the release of Islamist militants detained in Cameroon or have the 7 French nationals in their keeping killed. Plus, Pope Francis officially takes office as the Roman or as head of the Roman Catholic papacy, but he also maintains that the poor and less privileged be protected. You're watching the Primetime Newscast on ETV. Good evening to you viewers. We thank you so much for joining us in this edition of the news on Equinox Television. Islamist Boko Haram group is threatening to carry out series of attacks and kidnappings in Cameroon. And in a second message published by the purported group, they are demanding the release of their members that have been detained in Cameroon or have the 7 French nationals in their keeping killed. Staffman Solomon Amabo tells us more on the following report.
The purported Islamist militant group Boko Haram used one of the 7 French hostages to pass across their threats. Tanguy Moulin Fournier, in the audio message, reportedly transcribed by the Nigerian press, said their health situation was fast failing and fear they might simply pass on. He sent a distressed call to the French ambassador to Nigeria to do all he can to secure the release from the area he described as a desert. The French national, in the same message, said their captors, believed to be Boko Haram militants, are promising to let them go if their elements detained in Cameroon gain their freedom. Tanguy Moulin Fournier quotes the Islamists as saying they will multiply kidnappings and suicide bombings on Cameroonian territory if the Yaoundé and Abuja governments did not heal to their demands. While promising to be more deadly in Cameroon than even Nigeria, the purported Islamist Boko Haram militants did not explain how soon or when they intend to execute their plan of action. In a visit to Cameroon and Nigeria, the French Foreign Minister, Laurent Fabius, said all measures were being put in place to secure the release of his compatriots. The second video published by the Islamist Boko Haram militants comes 25 days after the French nationals, 7 of them in number, were kidnapped in Dabanga, in the far north region of Cameroon.
And a road accident reported at the Bonamusadi locality here in the economic capital Douala has claimed the lives of 2 persons. The incident, which resulted from a head-on collision between 2 motorbikes, has been blamed on reckless driving. Staff Lady Annabella reports.
These people are still to come out of shock following this accident, which has just cost the lives of 2 persons in Bonamusadi, a bike rider and his passenger, a woman. Eyewitnesses explain that the rider poorly attempted to overtake a truck when he was crushed.
Le truc c'est que le camion il allait vers l'avant en même temps que la moto. La moto essayant de doubler, le camion a dérapé à cause d'une bosse. Et ils se sont retrouvés sur la roue et le camion est monté sur.
Other observers think the truck driver was reckless and on high speed.
Les chauffeurs de camions du quartier là. Parce que ce n'est pas la première fois quand il passe ici, il passe en vitesse. Il faut rouler doucement au quartier.
The 2 persons died on the spot. The truck driver, on his part out of confusion, began shouting at the corpses. Inhabitants of this locality complain that truck drivers are rarely prudent and are always on breakneck speed while plying roads in the quarters.
And in the capital city Yaoundé is the mortal remains of a taxi driver that was discovered lying on the street. Reports say the deceased was assaulted by yet to be identified individuals who drove away with his vehicle. A Yaoundé-based correspondent Roland Akon tells us more in the following report.
Medical sources on the spot say the driver was strangulated to death by his assaulters before driving away with his car.
Type d'étranglement fait avec une matière très solide, donc une ceinture.
This medic adds that light wounds were also discovered on the mortal remains of the driver.
Avec un léger saignement aussi au niveau buccal.
C'est mon cousin direct. Il était taximan à l'aéroport de Simalène.
Family relatives say his line of transportation was the Yaoundé Simalène Airport, and that he leaves behind a son who is in upper seat.
Il a laissé un garçon qui fait terminale à l'ouest, dont la maman est décédée il y a de cela 8 ans aujourd'hui.
Police have opened investigations over the matter as family relatives transport the mortal remains to a morgue. The incident leaves inhabitants of the Skalom neighborhood in fear as a signal of yet another case of insecurity in Yaoundé.
Back here in the economic capital, Douala, at least 20 shops are said to be consumed into ravaging flames or by flames at the Bonamusadi market here in Douala, and firefighters were since this morning battling with the flames which had already consumed a greater section of the market. And we hear that the cause of the incident remains unclear. And senior reporter Christopher tells us in the following report that damage has been estimated at millions of francs CFA.
It all began at about 9:30 p.m. when
I received the caller and went around there. The fire is for around 20 meters to my shop, and we are trying to destroy it, but after we cannot have the possibility because the sapeur-pompier is not yet.
And so did fire become stubborn, attacking without any respect neighboring stores until the arrival of elements of the firefighting brigade all the way from Goti Aqua. The flames that ignited from a local tailoring workshop rapidly went wild, even visible from a considerable distance, thus attracting the population, including local administrative authorities. Two sectors, including some 50 shops at the main entrance into the Bonamusadi market, got completely ravaged by visiting flames, with material damage estimated early Tuesday morning at hundreds of million francs CFA. A fire incident in this Bonamusadi market, it should be recalled, is not the first of its kind, as the most recent occurred less than 8 months ago, causing enormous material loss. And each time, like last night's incident, authorities that be do promise a redress and even the reconstruction of the market. But for when and how?
As you rightly said, Christopher, that incident is coming after a series of fire incidents reported here in the economic capital, Douala, on daily basis. And also, we remain in the city of Douala, where students, workers, and business persons were stuck in their houses this morning for over 4 hours after heavy rains battered the city. Most Douala residents have blamed the uncontrollable inundations on poor drainage canals. So Rani Belsatawara visited some of the inundated areas here in the economic capital, Douala, and now tells us more in the following report.
The rainy season is yet to fully come, yet the streets of Douala are already inundated. We are in Aqua, in the economic capital, Douala. As you can see for yourselves, the streets are all covered with water.
This is how locals of La Refuge in Aqua started their day early Tuesday morning. The heavy downpour flooded the streets, preventing most city dwellers from opening their businesses and from circulating freely. According to residents of Dokaj, another inundated area still in Aqua, this is not the first time such incidents are happening. They have attributed it to poor construction of drainage canals.
For the first time the people were walking this road, we asked them to step this gutter right down, so that the gutter should be deep more than the quantity of water that we are having here. You see, but they don't do it in such a way. They don't do it in that way. But now we are having a lot of water here, so people cannot even come to job in Aqua.
We are now in another neighborhood, still in the economic capital, Douala, where the locals say they are stuck in their houses because the streets are flooded with water. We are precisely in Bonapriso.
Users of this stretch of road made a U-turn upon discovery of this large and deep pool of water. Some residents said they fear how their lives would look like when the rainy season finally draws in. They called on local authorities to look into the situation.
I am Ranibel Sato for Equinox Television.
Quite a hard time there for commuters. Thanks indeed, Ranibel Sato, for the report. Now, Pope Francis has re-echoed the need for the poor and the weak to be protected. He was speaking today during his inaugurated Mass at St. Peter's Basilica. He said the true power of a Pope is a concrete and humble service of the people, and Pope Francis has officially begun his tenure as head of the Roman Catholic Church, that is today. And he is, of course, the number 266 Pope to rule the Roman Catholic papacy. Now we talk sports football before we go, where the 23 players of the Indomitable Lions are camping in Bankomo in the central region of the country ahead of their friendly encounter with their Togolese counterpart. And Roland Akon in the following report tells us that Daniel Ninke and also Asue Koto are the only players on the list that are absent.
Stéphane, bonjour.
Oui, bonjour.
Bienvenue.
Merci.
Ça se passe bien jusqu'à présent?
Très très bien. Comme on est en danger, on est venu aider le pays.
Aider le pays?
Oui, le pays est en danger.
Besides physical, there will be psychological training during the training sessions of the Lions in Bankomo ahead of their encounter Saturday against Togo.
Le travail que nous avons à faire au niveau de notre équipe en ce moment, c'est beaucoup plus essayer d'asseoir la cohésion de l'équipe.
The team psychologist says there is need for team spirit or cohesion among the players. The Lions' fighting spirit, which is almost lost following several defeats suffered by the team, has to be recovered.
L'état d'esprit, l'esprit guerrier, retrouver cette grinta, la gara, comme disent les Italiens.
The recovery, the team psychologist says, passes through stress management of the players.
Qu'ils puissent gérer leur stress.
The team psychologist wants a team in top form set to perform, not only to win, but to perform well and win back the confidence of the public.
L'un des problèmes qu'on peut avoir dimanche, c'est face au public.
Cameroon occupies the third position of Group A with 3 points in 2 matches played so far, behind Libya and the DRC Congo. Saturday's Day 3 eliminatory for the 2014 World Cup in Brazil is capital, as only the first of each group qualifies for the last round.
And of course, the stakes of those encounters are high. Roland Akon, as Cameroon is still occupying the 79th position, as was following the recent FIFA's classification. That was the same position the Indomitable Lions was occupying during the February classification that was released by FIFA. And that does it for this segment of the news. But Talking Point is up next. Good evening to you viewers. We thank you so much for joining us tonight on Talking Point. We have a civil society activist tonight to tell us or comment on some of the key issues of the week. First of all, the inauguration of the Roman Catholic, the Pope of the Roman Catholic Church, that is Pope Francis, who officially took power or office. That was today in Rome. And also we talk about the fire incident that ravaged 20 shops at the Bonamusa market here in the economic capital Douala. Good evening to you, Mr. Bandolon Dakwe.
Good evening.
Like I earlier said, Pope Francis officially takes over from Pope Benedict XVI as head of the Roman Catholic papacy today. So what, according to you, is the significance of this inauguration to the entire Christian community, if I may ask?
Yeah, interesting enough, I'm not a Catholic, I'm a Presbyterian, but I think the Pope Francis particularly, his ascension into the Supreme Pontiff of the Roman Catholic Church is very significant to the international community, to Christians all over the world, because his papacy is marked by, one, the fact that he has stepped out of the rituals in terms of the luxuries of being a pope, and two, that he was not expected that the pope was supposed to come from Argentina, and secondly, he has been a down-to-earth person, from what we're made to understand from other media sources, that while he was the cardinal, the archbishop in Buenos Aires, he was that kind of person who preferred the similitude of the servant of God than the luxury of the Roman Catholic Church, where he visited the poor. He even kissed the legs of, or the feet of women who were affected by HIV. And he visited, in fact, his life, he gave up all the luxuries, as I was saying. And most especially, you see, he is going to facilitate the transformation of the Roman Catholic Church that has been, as witness of recent times, so many crises. And to tell you the truth, I am really very impressed.
Is it only the Roman Catholic Church?
No, when I talk about the Roman Catholic Church, it's the universal church. And the Christian churches as a whole. I told you at the beginning that particularly I'm a Presbyterian. My spiritual leader, you'll be very surprised. Besides being Reverend Bame of PC Bon Bepanda, Christian Kalina Tumi is one of those persons in Cameroon that I hold in high esteem, and he has inspired me in so many ways. And now when I see a pope, you know, reducing himself to the street because he says the focus will be on the poor, the handicapped, and the less privileged. How many world leaders have that in mind? And I think
but he's a spiritual leader.
He's a spiritual leader at the same time, a political leader of Rome.
What makes him a
because
political
Rome
leader?
is a state within a state in Italy, you understand? What makes him a unique leader within the church is that leadership generally calls for humility and servitude. So the idea of leaders generally, as I said, should see themselves as servant to their people, just like the Pope is trying to let them know. He came down to the street, greeted people. He had to demystify the myth that surrounds the papacy, something that has hardly happened within the church. And as I said, the church is bereaved of so many crises, and it needs a servant of God.
What are some of these crises?
Well, we know about accusation of sexual abuses, you know, within the church, which has, I mean, it has really rocked the Roman Catholic Church for a long time. But beside that, we have recently there was a leakage of the church finances in Rome, and if information had to filter out of the Rome, right, it means there was a problem somewhere, and it means they have to reorganize the church in such a way that the Roman Catholic Church, what the Pope is going to do, is expected to do, is to make sure that the church takes its major role as the moral temperature of the world, because many priests, many churches were already drained from that focus, and I think the Pope Francis, it is hoped, I mean, based on the appreciation and the analysis of all those who know him, and because we are struggling to know who he is. From the first day he stepped, after his election, he stepped on to talk to the public there in Rome. We saw a humble servant of God.
But do you think all these things to be achieved, it takes only a single individual?
No, the individual incarnates the values and the virtues of the church. Take the case of Pope Francis, for example. He is an incarnation of all what the Roman Catholic Church stands for. So his actions, anything he's going to say and those, is going to determine the spirit within the church.
Example.
Yeah, so that's what I'm saying.
Of course, when he talks about taking care of protecting the poor and the underprivileged, it means quite a lot. What according to you does that mean? Taking care of the poor?
Taking care of the poor, it tells us that the poor all over the world have been neglected, have been shoved to the background, and the few who are rich have forgotten about them. There are very few people, take our society in Cameroon, there are very few priests who like to identify themselves, or pastors, let me use the word pastors, identify themselves with the poor. Some would prefer to ally with the rich so as to enrich themselves. That is why it is said somewhere that about 80% of those who preach in the churches preach more of the economic message and not the spiritual message. That's a very serious problem. We're talking about 80%. That's from T.B. Joshua, for example. And you find yourself that the church is where people go there to submit themselves, to confess their sins, to ask for repentance and stuff. When you go there and the message that is preached there is not to transform your life spiritually, then there is a serious problem. And so if we see a pope like Pope Francis, as I said, you know, after Pope John Paul II, Pope Francis coming in has revived, is going to revive the church. We're not saying that Benedict XVI didn't do his job, but I think one thing that I am very proud of Benedict XVI is his the courage he took to resign after so many years. I'm sure 600 years, as I was saying. I was told, if I'm not mistaken.
No, he resigned after 85. He was 85.
No, when I say 600 years, that is
after the previous pope
resigned. You understand? Which means he took a very powerful decision, which has now brought in the new Pope, Pope Francis I. And I'm saying that it shows that the church is moving towards redemption. The church is moving towards the focus of transforming the world to be focused on Jesus Christ as the Savior of the world and on God.
An indication that we are having innovations. And of course, we do not only call you up here on the context or within the context of the inauguration of the Pope. That was obviously the actuality of the day or the news of the day. We also called you up to maybe find out your point of view as per the fire incident that occurred at the Bonamusadi market that was between last night and this morning. That is another fire incident occurring after a series of incidents, fire incidents reported here in the city of Douala, killing children, destroying homes and business setups or enterprises. Now it is bringing or reducing 20 shops into ashes. So what's your impression? What's your opinion?
Well, maybe I'll start by thanking Equinox Television for always inviting me to share the little opinion I have. I think I'm humbled by that. But what if I have something to say about the incidences of fire in Douala, in the markets, in Tiko, all over Cameroon, because it's not only here in Douala.
But the case of Douala
is becoming very rampant and a call for concern. And I think those who are responsible are supposed to do something. The first thing is you have to find out the cause of this fire incident and maybe the nature of the markets that are constructed and the way they are being electrified, because all of that, there should be some constant check by those the authorities concerned. Secondly, the fire brigade, I'm not very sure that they are well equipped to intervene accurately.
It's not a matter of being sure, because actually we did a report yesterday that they actually were complaining about limited finance and logistics.
That is why I'm saying that the state has to take this as an urgent call for concern, because the devastation, the accident that just occurred in Bonamusadi, they are evaluating, they are estimating that the loss could go up to billions or millions. That is too much for an economy like ours that is still crippling.
Not even the first time, not the second time,
so
not the third
when
time.
people make investments and they encounter such disasters, I think the state needs to put in place a very organized management system, an intervention system that is going to, because I'm sure that if the fire brigade got there on time, they would have limited the extent of the damage. You understand? So we know that Douala is very congested. The road network might not be too good. There are many other options for people to get to those areas when there is fire. But we have only one option, to move on the road. And you know the road here, the emergencies, you can't handle emergencies here. The road network is not good. The fire brigade themselves are not equipped. And so something has to be done, because I know this has to do with the ministry.
What should be done therefore?
Well, you begin by trying to modernize the fire brigade in Cameroon as a whole, right? Getting modern and sophisticated equipment for intervention.
Especially in a cosmopolitan town
especially
like
in a cosmopolitan town like Douala. Secondly, how our market constructed. I saw an item on your news about the drainage system in Douala, which is another disaster zone. The fire problem, there's so much congestion. So maybe if they have to map out how to construct markets in order to avoid this, they should give enough space so air should get in, because I'm sure the congestion, the electrification of those stores, you understand, and other problems are accounting for this. You only make report. I expect that some investigation should be done in finding out what actually happened, so that they make proposals. Well, I am of the opinion that we have a government delegate in Douala, we have mayors in Douala, we have the Ministry of Defense, the Department of Fire Brigade, as we're talking, because they are part of it, or the gendarmerie or whoever is involved. They have to come together and try to seek solutions to this problem. Everybody has his responsibility. You will not expect maybe some of us who are novice in what actually is happening there to explain to you properly what should be done. There are competent authorities who can address this problem and limit the rate of occurrences. You understand? We're saying that it is impossible to stop it completely, but we can limit the rate of occurrences, because the damages are always
alarming.
Alarming.
What if there's a businessman who is supposed, many people now are sometimes feeling discouraged, like you can open a business unit today and you just sit in the house. The next day
consumed by fire.
So what would you tell
a
businessman who is just about to begin, or maybe somebody who has already had his or her own establishment?
You're right. I think for the business community, those who are actually struggling to contribute in the development of this country by investing in what they are doing, opening stores in markets and stuff. First of all, the one problem we need to take note of is that when they bring in those electricians to electrify their stores, they should make sure that they secure them also, because sometimes it might be an explosion, maybe a gas or a cable that is loose. You understand? Everybody has the responsibility to help in avoiding this kind of mass destruction of property.
Because
and life.
a mistake from an individual
could cause what we are just talking about,
affecting tens of other persons.
So it is, like I said, a lot has to be done in this city where we live in. But we just pray that those who are given the responsibility to do this job should do it well and understand they're doing for their country, and also to find out how
You're talking about the government here.
Yeah, the government, the civil society, and the businessmen.
So you also have a role to play here.
Everybody.
Thanks indeed.
So it has to do with
Mr.
education and all of that. Yeah,
Thanks indeed for joining us tonight on Talking Point.
Thank you very much.
Hope to have you some other time again. And to you viewers, we have come to the end of this edition of the Primetime Newscast on Equinox Television. We thank you so much for your usual keen attention. Meantime, have a wonderful stay in the company of our programs. Good evening and see you tomorrow.